My ranch was supposed to be my sanctuary, but Karen turned it into a battlefield. Imagine finding a stranger's dirty dishes in your sink and then she demands you get locked up for it. It all started on a blistering August afternoon in Wyoming, the kind where the sun feels like it's personally out to get you. I'm Jack Tanner, a third-generation rancher, and my 200-acre spread is my blood and soul. After my wife, Clara, passed 2 years ago, I threw myself into this land. Every fence post, every calf, every dawn-to-dusk chore was my way of keeping her memory alive. So when I rolled up to my barn that day, sweat-soaked and bone-tired, and saw a beat-up Subaru parked by my porch, I thought I was hallucinating. Nobody comes out here uninvited. Nobody. The front door was ajar, and I heard humming from inside my house. My .30-06 was in the truck, but I grabbed a shovel from the porch instead, heart pounding like a war drum. I crept inside, boots creaking on the oak floors. Clara and I laid ourselves. There, in my kitchen, was a woman I'd never seen before, stirring a pot of chili like she owned the place. She was mid-30s, blonde hair in a messy bun, wearing a tie-dye shirt and a smug grin that made my blood boil. "Who the hell are you?" I barked, shovel raised. She didn't even flinch. "Oh, you must be Jack," she said, like we were old pals. "I'm Karen. I've been staying here. Nice place." Her casual tone was a slap in the face. "Staying here? In my house?" I demanded answers, but she just waved a hand, saying she'd found the ranch on some eco-living forum and decided it was perfect for her journey. Journey? This wasn't a damn Airbnb. I told her to pack her crap and get out before I dragged her out myself. That's when her eyes narrowed, and she pulled out her phone. "I'm calling 911, she said, voice dripping with entitlement. "You're threatening me, and I have rights." "Rights? To my home?" I was dumbfounded, shovel still in hand, as she dialed and started spinning a tale to the dispatcher about how I was the intruder, how she felt unsafe. It was like watching a snake charm its way out of a trap. I stood there, a stranger in my own kitchen, while this woman tried to have me arrested on my own land. The audacity was unreal, but what came next was worse. She claimed she'd been living here for weeks, and I hadn't even noticed. I'll admit, I'd been distracted. Between rustlers hitting neighboring ranches and a drought killing my pasture, I'd been sleeping in the bunkhouse near the cattle most nights. Still, the thought of her sneaking around my house, sleeping in Clara's bed, using her things, it made my skin crawl. I demanded to know how she got in. She smirked, saying the back door was, basically, an invitation. I wanted to scream, but the distant wail of sirens stopped me cold. She'd actually done it. Cops were coming. Deputy Ramirez arrived, a no-nonsense guy I'd known since high school. Karen launched into her sob story before he could even step out of his cruiser, claiming she was a tenant and I was trying to evict her illegally. Tenant? I nearly laughed, but Ramirez's face was grim. He asked for proof, mine or hers. I showed him the deed, my name clear as day, but Karen produced a crumpled lease agreement. A lease. With my address, my house, and a signature that sure as hell wasn't mine. Forged, no question, but good enough to make Ramirez pause. "I've been paying rent," Karen insisted, tears welling up on cue. "To who?" I roared. She mumbled something about an online landlord, some guy named Mike, and I swear I saw Ramirez suppress a sigh. He told us to calm down and sort it out at the station, but Karen wasn't done. She pointed at me, voice shaking with fake fear. "He's dangerous. He threatened me with a shovel." I wanted to hurl that shovel into the next county, but I dropped it, hands up, knowing how this looked. At the station, the truth started unraveling, but not fast enough. Karen's story had holes she couldn't name, Mike, and her so-called lease had typos even a kid could spot. But she was relentless, spinning tales of victimhood, claiming I'd abandoned the ranch and she was just caretaking. Caretaking. My fridge was full of her kombucha, my guest room littered with her yoga mats and crystals. She'd been living like a queen while I was out breaking my back to save my herd. Ramirez dug deeper, and Karen's lies started to crack. Turns out, she wasn't just a random squatter. She'd been bouncing around ranches in 3 counties, pulling the same stunt: move in, forge documents, claim tenant rights. She'd found my place on some shady forum where off-grid types swap tips on reclaiming empty properties. My ranch wasn't empty, I lived here, bled here, but to her, it was just another mark. The kicker: she wasn't alone. Karen had a partner, some guy named Trevor, who'd been crashing in my attic. I hadn't even checked up there, too consumed with the cattle. When Ramirez's team searched the house, they found him scruffy, smug, and hauling a duffel bag of my tools, Clara's jewelry, and even my dad's old pocket watch. That watch was the last thing Clara gave me before she died. Seeing it in his filthy hands snapped something in me. I lunged, but Ramirez held me back, promising justice. Karen and Trevor were cuffed, but not before she screamed about her rights and how we'd all pay for this. I thought that was the end, but the real gut punch was yet to come. As they were dragged away, Karen looked back at me, not with anger, but with a chilling smile. "You'll see me again, Jack," she said, like a promise. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. The ranch felt tainted, like her presence had seeped into the walls. Weeks passed, and I thought I'd reclaimed my home. But then the letters started. Anonymous, handwritten, slipped under my door at night. "You can't keep what's not yours," one read. Another, "I know what you did." I hadn't done anything, but the words gnawed at me. Was Karen out? Was Trevor? Or was this someone new, another vulture circling my land? I installed cameras, changed locks, but the feeling of being watched never left. Then came the fire. Not a big one, just a shed, but it was deliberate gasoline-soaked rags stuffed under the floorboards. The sheriff found footprints leading to the woods, but no trace of Karen or Trevor. They were out on bail, and I knew it was them. I could feel it. My ranch, my sanctuary, was now a prison of paranoia. Every creak, every shadow, was a threat. I'd fought for this land my whole life, but now I wondered if it was fighting me back. The worst part? I started doubting myself. Had I missed signs? Had I let Clara's memory slip so far that I didn't notice my own home being stolen? The ranch was all I had left of her, and Karen had turned it into a war zone. I sat on the porch one night, Clara's watch in my hand, and realized the truth: this wasn't just about land. It was about trust, betrayal, and the cost of holding on too tight. I couldn't shake the feeling that the ranch was no longer mine. Every morning, I'd wake to the same Wyoming sun, but it felt like a spotlight exposing my failures. Clara's watch sat on the nightstand, ticking like a heartbeat, reminding me of the life we'd built here and how quickly it was unraveling. Karen and Trevor were out on bail, and though the sheriff promised they'd be watched, I knew better. People like them didn't just vanish. They schemed, they waited, and they struck when you least expected it. I threw myself into fortifying the ranch. New locks, motion sensor lights, a couple of trail cameras I bought off a guy in town. I even got a dog, a grizzled mutt named Buck, who growled at anything that moved. But no amount of security could quiet the dread. Those letters kept coming, always at night, always handwritten. "You don't deserve this place," one said. "She's watching you," said another. She? Karen? Clara? My mind spun, second-guessing every shadow. I stopped sleeping, living on black coffee and adrenaline, patrolling the property with my rifle like some paranoid hermit. The neighbors noticed. Old man Harris, who ran the next ranch over, pulled up one morning in his rusted Ford. "Jack, you look like hell," he said, spitting tobacco into the dirt. "Heard about your squatter problem. You sure you're okay out here alone?" I shrugged it off, said I had it under control, but his eyes lingered, skeptical. Harris had seen his share of trouble rustlers, droughts, even a grizzly that took half his herd one winter. But this was different. This wasn't nature or bad luck. This was personal. A week after the shed fire, I found tracks again, not footprints, but tire marks, fresh ones, cutting through the back pasture. They led to an old access road I hadn't used in years, one Clara and I always meant to pave but never got around to. I followed them on foot, Buck at my side, until they disappeared into the woods. My gut told me it was Trevor, maybe scoping the place for another hit. But why? They'd already taken enough me peace, my trust, Clara's watch. What else did they want? I got my answer at the county courthouse. Karen and Trevor's hearing was coming up, and I went to make sure the judge saw through their lies. The place was a circus. Karen in a cheap blazer, playing the victim, Trevor slouched beside her like he was bored. But what hit me like a freight train was their lawyer, a slick city type named Ellison who smelled of cologne and bad intentions. He didn't just defend them, he attacked me. Claimed I'd been negligent, leaving the ranch vulnerable to homesteaders like Karen. Homesteaders. Like she was some pioneer staking a claim, not a thief squatting in my home. Ellison produced more documents, emails, photos, even a fake utility bill with Karen's name and my address. It was a masterclass in fraud, and I could see the judge wavering. My lawyer, a local guy named Pete who mostly handled land disputes, was out of his depth. "Jack, we need evidence," Pete whispered. "Something concrete." Concrete? I had my deed, my life poured into that land, but it wasn't enough. Karen's lies were a house of cards, but they were stacked high enough to cast a shadow. That night, I tore through the house, looking for anything to prove they'd been there longer than I thought. In the attic, where Trevor had been hiding, I found a loose floorboard. Under it was a metal box, rusted but heavy. Inside were papers not mine, not Clara's, but old, yellowed documents from the 1940s. Land surveys, letters, a will. My grandfather's name was on them, but so was another, Margaret Hensley. I'd never heard of her, but the will left half the ranch to her family, not mine. My stomach dropped. Was this real? Had my family's claim been a lie all along? I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, papers spread out, trying to make sense of it. The ranch had been in my family since my great-grandfather, or so I'd been told. But these documents suggested a dispute, a split that was never resolved. Had Karen found this? Was this her endgame, not just squatting, but claiming the land itself? The thought made me sick. I called Pete at dawn, and he promised to dig into county records, but his tone wasn't hopeful. "Old claims like this are messy, Jack," he said. "Could take years to sort out." Years. I didn't have years. The ranch was bleeding money. Drought had killed half my grazing land, and I'd spent my savings on legal fees and repairs. If Karen and Trevor were playing a long game, they were winning. I started to wonder if they'd known about the will before they even showed up. Maybe that eco-living forum was just a front, a way to scout properties with shaky titles. I felt like a pawn in a game I didn't even know I was playing. Then Buck started barking. It was 3 a.m., the kind of dark where you can't tell sky from ground. I grabbed my rifle and checked the cameras. Nothing. But Buck wouldn't stop, his hackles up, staring at the barn. I crept out, heart hammering, the air thick with the smell of sagebrush and something else, gasoline, again. The barn door was open, and inside, I found it, a pile of rags, soaked and reeking, just like the shed. But this time, there was a note pinned to the wall, handwritten in that same scrawl, "Burn it all, Jack." I called Ramirez, but by the time he got there, the trail was cold. No footprints, no tire marks, just the note and the rags. He took them for evidence, but I could see it in his eyes. She thought I was losing it. "Jack, you sure you're not jumping at shadows?" he asked. I wanted to punch him. Shadows don't leave notes. Shadows don't steal your life. The next day, I drove to the library in town, digging through old records for anything on Margaret Hensley. It took hours, but I found her a widow who'd lived on the ranch in the 1930s, married to a man who'd partnered with my great-grandfather. They'd split the land after a feud, but the paperwork was never finalized. Margaret's family disappeared after her death, and my family just took over. No wonder Karen thought she could exploit it. If she'd found those documents, she could claim to be a Hensley descendant, real or not, and tie me up in court for years. I was spiraling, but I couldn't stop. I started sleeping in the barn, rifle across my lap, buck at my feet. The letters kept coming, each one crueler. Clara would be ashamed, one read. That one broke me. I sat there, sobbing like a kid, clutching her watch. Clara had loved this ranch, loved me, and now it felt like I was failing her all over again. I wondered if Karen knew about Clara, if she'd dug into my pain just to twist the knife. Then Pete called. He'd found something in 1942 court filing where Margaret's son tried to reclaim the ranch but lost. The judge ruled in my family's favor, but the documents were sloppy, full of gaps. It's enough to hold up in court, Pete said, but Karen's lawyer is good. If they push this, it'll cost you. Cost me? I was already broke, emotionally and financially. But I told him to fight. This was my home. Clara's home. I wasn't letting Karen win. That night, I set a trap. I left the house dark, parked my truck a mile away, and hid in the loft with Buck. If Karen or Trevor came back, I'd catch them. Hours passed, my eyes burning from staring into the dark. Then, a flicker headlights, slow and deliberate, creeping up the access road. My heart raced. This was it. I gripped my rifle, ready to end this nightmare. The headlights cut through the night like a blade, slicing across the ranch's dusty expanse. I crouched in the barn loft, Buck growling low beside me, my rifle steady but my hands shaking. The vehicle, a dark SUV, not Karen's Subaru, rolled to a stop near the house. Two figures stepped out, their silhouettes sharp against the moonlight. I recognized Trevor's lanky frame, but the other wasn't Karen. It was a man, older, broad-shouldered, moving with a confidence that set my nerves on edge. They weren't sneaking, they were bold, like they owned the place. I held my breath, watching through a crack in the loft boards. Trevor carried a gas can, the same kind used in the shed fire, while the stranger held a crowbar. They headed for the house, not the barn, and I realized they hadn't seen my truck parked a mile off. Good. I had the upper hand, but my gut churned with questions. Who was this guy? Another squatter? Or something worse? Buck's growl deepened, and I hushed him, my mind racing. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. This was a coordinated hit. I crept down the ladder, rifle slung over my shoulder, and slipped out the barn's back door. The night was cold, the air biting my lungs as I circled wide, using the shadows of the corral to stay hidden. The men were at the porch now, whispering. I caught snippets, titles: Shaky Hensley claim, burn it if we have to. My blood ran cold. They knew about the will, about Margaret Hensley. This wasn't a random scam, they were after the ranch itself, and they were willing to destroy it to get it. I texted Ramirez, a quick SOS with my location, praying he'd get here fast. Then I moved closer, close enough to hear the stranger's voice, low and gravelly. She said he's alone. No witnesses. Karen. She was orchestrating this from wherever she was hiding. I wanted to charge in, take them both down, but I forced myself to wait. Evidence, Pete had said. I needed proof, something to bury them for good. Trevor pried open the back door with a sickening crack, and they slipped inside. I followed, heart pounding, Buck at my heels. The house was dark, but I knew every inch, every creaky floorboard, every corner. I heard them in the living room, rifling through drawers, muttering about papers and proof. They were looking for the Hensley documents, the ones Vista I could end this, Jack. I could end this right here. But then I heard a splash. Gasoline. They were dousing the place, just like the note warned. Burn it all, Jack. My home, Clara's home, was seconds from going up in flames. I couldn't wait for Ramirez. I stepped into the doorway, rifle raised, and shouted, "Drop it, now." Trevor froze, the gas can slipping from his hands, but the stranger lunged, crowbar swinging. I ducked, the metal whistling past my head, and Buck charged, sinking his teeth into the man's leg. He screamed, stumbling, and I slammed the rifle butt into his shoulder, dropping him. Trevor bolted for the door, but I tackled him, pinning him to the floor. "Who's the other guy?" I growled, pressing the barrel to his back. He was shaking, babbling about Ellison's orders and the claim. Ellison, their lawyer. Of course. He wasn't just defending them, he was in on it, probably bankrolling the whole scheme. I tied Trevor's hands with a belt, then checked the stranger, who was out cold, blood trickling from his leg. Buck stood guard, snarling. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ramirez was close. I dragged both men outside, away from the gasoline-soaked house, and waited. My mind was a storm. The Hensley will, Ellison's involvement, Karen's chilling smile all pointed to something bigger. This wasn't just a squat, it was a calculated theft, a plot to exploit a decades-old loophole and steal my legacy. And I'd almost lost everything. Ramirez arrived with 2 deputies, cuffing Trevor and the stranger, who turned out to be a lowlife named Vince, a hired muscle with a rap sheet longer than my arm. They found more in the SU forged documents, a laptop with emails linking Ellison to a shady real estate syndicate. Karen had been their front, the face of the scam, while Ellison pulled strings, banking on my isolation and the ranch's murky history to push me out. The Hensley claim was real but unenforceable, the courts had settled that in 1942. But with enough forged papers and legal pressure, they could have tied me up until I went bankrupt. Karen was picked up the next day, hiding in a motel 2 counties over. She didn't smile this time. Her story fell apart under interrogation. Her tenant act was a lie, her lease a fake, her tears just another performance. She'd targeted ranches like mine across the West, preying on owners too busy or broken to notice. But she'd underestimated me, underestimated what this land meant. Clara's memory wasn't just in the watch or the house, it was in every acre, every fence I'd mended, every sunrise I'd fought for. The legal battle wasn't over. Ellison's syndicate had deep pockets, and even with Karen and Trevor in custody, the lawsuits loomed. Pete warned me it could drag on, draining what little I had left. The ranch was safe for now, but the scars ran deep. The house smelled of gasoline for weeks, a constant reminder of how close I'd come to losing it all. I cleaned it myself, scrubbing until my hands bled, trying to erase Karen's presence. But some stains don't fade. One night, I found another letter under the door. Not Karen's handwriting this time, but Ellison's, elegant and cold. "This isn't over, Tanner." My heart sank. I burned it in the fireplace, watching the flames eat his words, but the threat lingered. They'd come for me again, maybe not today, but someday. The ranch was mine, but it felt like a target now, a prize for vultures who saw weakness in a man alone. The final blow came not from them, but from me. Digging through the Hensley papers, I found a letter Clara had written, tucked in the box I'd missed all those years. It was dated a month before her death, addressed to me but never sent. "Jack," it read, "I know you'll fight for this place, but don't let it consume you. It's just land. You're my home." I broke down, clutching the paper, her words cutting deeper than any of Karen's lies. Clara had known I'd hold too tight, that I'd let the ranch become my cage. She tried to warn me, and I hadn't listened. I sold the ranch that spring. Not because I had to, but because I couldn't stay. Every corner held Clara's ghost, but also Karen's betrayal, Trevor's theft, Ellison's threats. I kept a small parcel, enough for a cabin, and gave Buck a home with Harris. The money went to a trust for the community, to keep the land alive in a way Clara would have wanted open, shared, not hoarded. I moved to a small house in town, where the nights were quieter, the shadows less threatening. But I kept her watch, ticking on my wrist, reminder that home isn't a place, it's what you carry with you. Karen got 3 years, Trevor 2. Ellison still out there, his syndicate untouched, their greed a cancer that never stopped spreading. I see Clara's face in every sunrise, hear her voice in the wind. She was right, I'd fought for the wrong thing. The ranch was just dirt and dreams, but I'd made it my prison. Letting it go was the hardest thing I ever did, and the only way I could be free.